Hello, lovely learners. Welcome back to A Life Learned. Today I just thought I'd give a little update on where my therapy is, as I haven't talked about this in over a year, I think. But a lot has changed. Last year, I was finishing up my placement for my social service worker program. Finally graduated that in June, by the way, yay. But at the end of it, my supervisor decided to put me through a breathing exercise, basically to try and help me calm down because she noticed I was really tense and overstressed. And to my regret, that breathing exercise caused me to break down because I was so tense and overstressed, and also have a lot of unresolved trauma still that hasn't really been able to be worked out. And so that made me realize that I was still in need of doing at least some more therapy and work in order to move further in the social work field, because at the time I had ambitions to get a bachelor's in social work after finishing my diploma for the social service worker program. So I started poking around trying to find a therapist who was trained specifically in the ability to do parts work, which is part of inner family systems theory. For those who aren't familiar, it's basically an advanced form of CBT. And I'd heard about it through a couple friends. My friend's sister had done it a few years ago, and then one of my closest friends, August, did it, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And they both seemed to make like huge progress. Like they just made leaps and bounds of progress in their sense of self and in their ability to maintain calm and stability. And so I was really curious about that, and thus realizing I needed a bit more therapy, I thought, well, maybe I can try that because I haven't always had success with the different therapies I've done. Like the group therapies I did when I was younger, in my mid-20s or early 20s, really effective, really helpful. Just helped me with the most basic, PTSD struggles, finding grounding, finding stability when I'm in a panic attack, stuff like that. But it wasn't able to help me through the psychological turmoil and torture and shame and all the other struggles of self that I have that are based in just my lifelong experience of chronic trauma, going from intense childhood emotional neglect to molestation to rape to beatings to my aunt being murdered to being dragged through the court system. Like I've just been through the ringer. And it's not, just one of those experiences, it's all of it. And definitely the foundational emotional abuse and psychological neglect when I was really young, that was the precursor for all of it. And the help working through PTSD symptoms in that group therapy was more helpful in managing and understanding myself than in working through those fundamental senses of self-shame and self-worth and all that other stuff. So I was fortunate enough to be able to find a therapist who was willing to take me on at a reduced rate because I am freaking poor. And that was one of my big barriers to being in consistent therapy over the last 10 years, though I have been in therapy for over a decade, but it's been on and off based on whether I could find funding. The Criminal Compensation Board was funding my therapy for a while, and then when that ran out, I just didn't have funding. And at this point, I'm just paying out of pocket, which means that I'm taking money out of my groceries. But I really need the therapy. So that's where I'm at, is it's just like, all right, we figure out crappier food to spread out our diet throughout the month because we need this therapy. So anyway, I wanted to start it throughout the summer, but she was busy and she needed to finish some of her training for parts work. And of course I would want her fully trained. And so I basically started in August, about 7 months ago. In that time, things got a lot worse first. So for anyone who's got like extreme trauma, if you've been through therapy a lot and you're just feeling frustrated that you're never feeling like you're making progress, I really think parts work is worth considering, because I just like the people I had seen, I have been making leaps and bounds of progress. But be warned, like a lot of other therapies, but especially with this one, it gets worse before it gets better. It's like dusting or cleaning a cluttered space. Everything needs to come off the shelves, and you just have a giant mess of stuff everywhere before you can start cleaning it all individually and then putting it back where it belongs. So that's kind of what parts work is you're just like, you're ripping everything down, you got a giant mess, and then you're slowly kind of putting it back, so to speak. That's been my experience, at least anyways. If you'd like more information or to learn more about parts work and inner family systems, I've shared a link below. Katie Morton talks a little bit about it and her experience with it. She's an amazing therapist on YouTube. If you're not familiar with her, highly recommend her. But I also recommend just Googling it. There's a lot of links out there that explain what it is and how it can be helpful. So it's definitely something to look into if you're someone looking for more healing and you've been struggling to find that in the therapies you've currently tried. I seem to have more parts than most people. My therapist explained that basically parts work, it's not like, we all have multiple personalities. That's not the idea. It's not dissociative identity disorder. It's just acknowledging that we have conflicting wants and needs, and we have these different parts of ourselves that have different goals and desires. It's all you. It's just like, especially with trauma, parts of ourselves can basically break off, and we will ostracize and isolate them and exile them in a sense, and just be like, you don't count anymore. Your needs, they don't matter. Your wants, we're not doing it. And that's the ways that we protect ourselves sometimes, although unfortunately it can be very self-destructive as well. But anyway, so in my case, at this point, even though we have actually frankly been moving very slow, I am a really, really insightful person, so I've been making a lot of leaps in our slow progress, and I've now identified about 14 different parts, which I know some people might think that's a lot, but it's just like I'm good at being able to see the hairline differences between some of them and how like they have different ages, different wants, desires, goals, different things going on. The whole thing about parts work that's really helpful for people with trauma is it helps you recognize some of those conflicting wants. It helps you recognize where some of your motivations are coming from, and be more aware of like what your needs are, what your wants are, what your motivations are, why they are, and how to handle them, how to serve yourself and take care of yourself, basically. So like for me, interestingly, in it getting worse before it got better, I had a really big breakdown in October. Like I almost killed myself, guys. It was serious, which sucks. And that wasn't just the parts work. That the parts work didn't cause that. It's that I was doing the parts work, and it was stirring up my waters, making it all mucky, while I was also in 2 different classes at King's College University that were really triggering to my trauma. And the final like cherry on the terrible burning Sunday was I was doing a job as a property manager, and it was killing me. Don't do that job if you have trauma. Do not recommend. I mean, okay, if you're a person who's like, I love constant stimulus, give it to me, I want constant change, and that works for you despite your trauma, go for it. But like, property management is so stressful, and it's just constant, just always something, and no thank you. So the combination of those 3 things they unfortunately caused a really bad mental breakdown that all led to some very serious suicidal ideation that was like no joke. But I reached out for help, got support, figured my shit out. And one of the main things that I figured out as well, which was part of like this breakdown, it's hard sometimes to face this stuff. I had to realize that a lot of my motivations to be a helper and to be in the social work field were based in trauma. They were all based in wanting to rescue other people because no one rescued me, wanting to be a helper as a way of trying to make use of my trauma, make purpose out of it and all these other things. But none of that really comes from like the core me. I don't know how else to say it. It's like everything I've ever been doing has been this trying to seek worth. So I'm trying to be a helper, I'm trying to be a social worker in order to find some other new way of being worthy in the world because I can't find it within myself. And that was a little bit soul crushing to be like, oh, everything I've ever believed or known about myself isn't really fundamentally based in who I necessarily am, but more in my just motivations to constantly find worth. And then I realized that the reason I wanted to go further in the social work field is because I was just trying to find a higher income job. I also want to help people, but it just felt really corrupt or gross. It felt wrong that my motivation to continue seeking education in a field that is about helping people was for money. So, like, people pointed out to me later, like, yeah, but you didn't just want money. You wanted a better paying job while helping people. And I'm like, okay, yes, that's true. But at that time, I was so messed up, and I was just like, if my motivation is money, that feels toxic. So I gotta step out. I can't do this. So I dropped out of school, dropped out of work, not doing anything right now, just doing the therapy. Feels a little ironic because the reason I started the therapy was to go further in the social work field, and now I'm not doing that. But who doesn't just want healing for the sake of healing, right? Like, so yeah, everything got worse. My life fell apart. I stopped everything I was doing that I thought was making progress. But I have been so much calmer in the last couple months. I have been able to just start seeing myself. I don't know how else to say it, except I've been starting to finally see myself, accept myself, find worth in myself, give myself the little things that I've always wanted, but I've never been able to. I've still got a ways to go. I don't even know if I'm halfway, you know what I mean? Like, I got some work to do. But the main message here is I've made a lot of progress. It got really bad at first, but it's been getting better since. Apologies for my noisy neighbors. But anyways, it's been getting way better. And so if you've got extreme trauma, if you've been struggling through therapy, you don't feel like you've been making progress, I really do recommend trying to find a therapist who is trained in inner family systems, specifically with the ability to do parts work. You never know, it could make a huge difference. If you're someone who's done parts work, please share in the comments below. If you're familiar with inner family systems, if I've misquoted or said anything wrong about the therapy, please correct me in the comments by all means. If you are afraid of therapy and you just want to discuss like the ins and outs of therapy in general, please, again, feel free to comment below. This is an open forum. I love to hear what you guys have to say and share. I love learning your stories, and it really helps me feel less alone when you guys share that you can relate. So thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing your stories if you do. And as always, please do join me again next week or sometime soon where I try again to share a little something I've learned or experienced in life.